I am staring at something right now that I honestly didn't think I'd see in my lifetime. A major American city just ran federal agents out of town, not with violence, not with chaos, with sustained, organized, relentless pressure from ordinary people who said enough is enough. And I need to tell you why this matters more than almost anything else happening in America right now. Minneapolis just forced Tom Bovino, the ICE Director overseeing what can only be described as domestic terror operations, to pack up and leave. And listen, I know that sounds dramatic. I know some of you are thinking I am being hyperbolic, but I spent the last 3 days reading over 1,200 comments from people across the political spectrum, and what I found genuinely surprised me. Because this isn't breaking down the way you'd expect. Here's what really gets me. About 38% of the comments I analyzed came from people who are furious at what ICE has been doing, but they are not the progressive activists you might assume. These are veterans, these are nurses and caregivers, these are gun rights advocates who are absolutely appalled that the government's official position is now that if you are illegally carrying a firearm, federal agents can gun you down in the street. Think about that for a second. The party that claims to defend the Second Amendment just gave federal agents permission to execute anyone exercising their Second Amendment rights. But here's where it gets complicated, and this is important. Another 22% of comments were from people defending ICE operations, and I am not going to straw man their position because that would be intellectually dishonest. The strongest argument they make is this: we have immigration laws. Those laws need to be enforced. If we don't enforce them, we don't have a country. And you know what? That's not an unreasonable starting position. The problem is, what's happening in Minneapolis and cities across America has absolutely nothing to do with enforcing immigration law anymore. Let me tell you what happened that changed everything. A man named Alex Pry was murdered. Not killed in a firefight, not accidentally shot during a dangerous operation, murdered, executed in the street by federal agents who shot him in the back. And here's the detail that broke me when I learned it. Alex Pry was a Veterans Affairs nurse. He dedicated his life to caring for veterans who had served this country. And the day before he was killed, he had written a farewell tribute for a veteran he'd been caring for who had just passed away. I am going to read you what he wrote because this matters. This is who these agents killed. Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we render our honor and our gratitude. He wrote that on December 10th, 2024. The veteran he was honoring had died exactly 1 year before Alex himself would be murdered by his own government. I am not a religious person, but that timing feels like something beyond coincidence. It feels like a message. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what exactly happened? Why did they shoot him? And this is where the government's story falls apart completely. The official justification is that Alex Pry was legally carrying a firearm. That's it. That's the excuse. He was exercising his constitutional right to carry a weapon, and for that, federal agents shot him in the back and left him to die in the street. And I need you to understand something crucial here. This isn't about one bad apple. This isn't about agents who panicked or made a tragic mistake. Multiple credible sources, including military experts who've studied these operations, are telling us that what we are seeing is exactly what these agents were trained to do. They were sent into blue cities with instructions to terrorize, not to enforce immigration law, to terrorize American citizens into submission. I know that sounds like conspiracy theory. I know some of you are thinking I've lost the plot. So let me lay out the evidence, and you can decide if I am connecting dots that aren't there, or if I am seeing the pattern everyone else is too afraid to name. About a year ago, Congress, with the help of Republicans, gave ICE and related agencies more money than they've ever had in history. We're talking about a budget bigger than the entire United States Marine Corps. Not just bigger, tripled. And what did they do with that money? They didn't hire people trained in law enforcement. They didn't hire people with experience in community policing. They put out recruiting videos that explicitly encourage abuse, videos showing agents in tactical gear breaking down doors, terrorizing families, using overwhelming force against people who pose no threat. And here is what terrifies me. The people who watch those videos and think that looks like a great career, those are exactly the wrong people to give badges and guns. You are selecting for cruelty, you are selecting for people who want to dominate and hurt others, and then you are giving them legal immunity to do it. One commenter, a 30-year law enforcement officer and military veteran, wrote something that really stuck with me. He said the shooting of Alex Pry was not a tragedy. It was not an accident. It was a cold-blooded execution by a bunch of losers. And I think he is exactly right. This was murder, plain and simple. But here's where the Minnesota story gets really important, because what happened there shows us the blueprint for fighting back. And I want to be really clear about this. I am not talking about violence. I am talking about sustained, organized, legal pressure from ordinary citizens who refuse to accept this as normal. Minneapolis residents did several things simultaneously. They showed up. Day after day, week after week, they protested. They made it impossible for ICE agents to operate without being documented, without being witnessed, without facing public accountability. They organized legal observers who followed ICE operations and recorded everything. They contacted their representatives constantly. They made it clear to every elected official that there would be political consequences for supporting these operations. And most importantly, they didn't give up when things got hard or when the government tried to wait them out. And it worked. Tom Bovino is leaving Minneapolis. Agents are being pulled out. Now, I need to be honest with you. This is not total victory, not even close. Bovino isn't in jail. He's not being prosecuted for accessory to murder, which is what he should be facing. He is being allowed to retire with a full pension. He's moving to another position where he'll probably continue doing damage in a different form. The rot doesn't stop with him. It goes all the way to the top. But here's what Minnesota proved. Pressure works. Sustained resistance works. When ordinary people decide they will not accept tyranny, tyranny retreats. Maybe not completely, maybe not permanently, but it retreats, and that matters. Now, I want to address something that about 15% of commenters brought up, and it's a legitimate concern. Some people are worried that if we push too hard, if we corner these agents, they'll just lash out and become even more brutal. And honestly, Bovino himself made this threat. He essentially said, if you keep calling us the Gestapo, we're going to act like the Gestapo. And you know what my response to that is? If telling the truth about what you are doing makes you act worse, that proves you were never interested in law enforcement in the first place. You're interested in domination. You're interested in making people afraid to speak up. That is not law enforcement. That is terrorism. And I believe, based on everything I've seen, that is exactly what this is. Domestic terrorism carried out by federal agents with the explicit approval and encouragement of the administration. I am going to say something now that might lose some of you, and I understand if it does, but I think it needs to be said. What we rewatching happen in America right now is not normal law enforcement gone slightly wrong. It's not overzealous agents who need better training. It is the deliberate construction of a paramilitary force designed to suppress dissent and punish political enemies. And if you think I am exaggerating, let me ask you this. Why are they targeting blue cities almost exclusively? Why are they using military tactics designed for war zones? Why are they shooting American citizens in the back for legally carrying firearms? The answer, and I believe this deeply, is that this administration is testing how far they can go. They are seeing if Americans will accept this level of violence against their fellow citizens. They are normalizing atrocities so that when things get worse, and they will get worse if we don't stop this now, we'll be too exhausted to fight back. But Minnesota just showed them something they didn't expect. Americans want to accept this. Not all of us, not without a fight. And that gives me hope. Real hope, not naive hope. Hope based on evidence that resistance works. Now, let me tell you what nobody else is talking about. More people died in ICE custody in 2025 than in the previous 2 decades combined. Let that sink in for a moment. In 1 year, under this administration, ICE killed more people than the entire previous 20 years. That is not enforcement. That is extermination. And it is happening right now on American soil to American citizens and immigrants alike. And here's the connection that I think most people are missing. This isn't really about immigration. It never was. Immigration is the excuse. The real goal is creating a federal force that answers only to the president, that operates with impunity, that can be deployed against any population the administration considers threatening. Today it's immigrants and people who help them. Tomorrow it could be protesters, or journalists, or anyone who speaks out. I talked to Congressman Jason Crow about this. He's a decorated military veteran, someone who actually understands what legitimate use of force looks like. And he told me something that I can stop thinking about. He said, we are not going to allow their fragility, their ego, any fear of how they were going to respond to get us to back away from what our duty is. We need moral clarity. We need decisiveness. We need strength. And we can control how they'll act, but we can control how we respond. And he's absolutely right. The argument that we shouldn't push too hard because they might get worse is the argument of someone who's already accepted defeat. It's the argument of someone who has decided that survival is more important than freedom. And I understand that impulse. I really do. When you re-scared, when you re-watching federal agents murder people in the streets, the instinct is to put your head down and hope they don't notice you. But here's what I learned from reading all these comments. The people who are most terrified right now aren't progressive activists. They are veterans who fought for this country and can believe what it is becoming. They are nurses and caregivers who see themselves in Alex Pry and know they could be next. They are parents who are realizing their children are growing up in a country where the government kills citizens with impunity. They gun owners who suddenly understand that the Second Amendment means nothing if federal agents can execute you for exercising it. One of the most powerful comments I read came from someone who said the reason Rommel feared Australian troops in World War II was because they wouldn't relent. Every turn he made, they were there. Every report he got was about their success and his loss. They made his life a living failure. And the commenter said, we need to learn from history. We need to make this administration's cruelty unsustainable through constant, unrelenting pressure. And I think that exactly right. We can win by being nice. We can win by hoping they'll see reason. We can win by making it impossible for them to continue, by showing up, by documenting everything, by supporting each other, by voting out every single politician who enables this, by making sure that everyone involved in these atrocities knows that history will remember them as the monsters they are. Steve Schmidt said something yesterday that I found deeply moving. He said the descendants of the Bovinos and the Noams and the Millers of this administration will deny their own inheritance. They will change their very names to escape the shame of what this government has done. And I believe that is true, but only if we make sure history remembers. Only if we refuse to let this be normalized. Only if we fight like everything depends on it, because it does. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room. Some of you are thinking, okay, this all sounds terrible, but what can I actually do? I'm just one person. I don't live in Minneapolis. I can protest every day. I have a job. I have a family. I am exhausted, and I get it. I feel the same exhaustion. We all do. But here is what Minnesota taught us. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do something. Maybe you can protest every day, but you can show up once. Maybe you can quit your job to become a full-time activist, but you can call your representative. Maybe you can donate money, but you can share information. Maybe you can organize a movement, but you can support the people who are organizing. And here's the thing that gives me the most hope. About 8% of comments I analyzed were from people who said they changed their mind about this issue after seeing the video of Alex Pry being murdered. These weren't people who were sympathetic to ICE before. Some of them were actively defending these operations, but seeing that video, seeing an American citizen executed in the street, broke through their tribal loyalties and made them see the truth. That means persuasion is possible. That means we are not hopelessly divided. That means there are people on the other side who can be reached if we are willing to engage with them honestly and respectfully. And I think that our most powerful weapon. Not violence, not revenge, truth, and the willingness to keep telling it even when it's hard, even when we re-scared, even when it feels like nobody is listening, because people are listening. Minnesota proved that. The polling is shifting dramatically. A clear majority of Americans now say they've had it with ICE. They want Congress to do something. They demanding accountability. This is a watershed moment, and we can waste it. But I need to be honest with you about something. Republicans in Congress aren't coming around. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Congressman Crow told me he's done waiting for them to find courage. He said they've had every opportunity to do the right thing and they haven't. So his plan is simple. Kick them out, replace them with people who will actually uphold their oaths. And I think that the only realistic strategy, which brings me to what I think is the most important point. We need to understand that this isn't a temporary crisis. This is a test. The administration is testing whether Americans will accept living in an authoritarian state. They retesting whether we'll allow our government to murder citizens without consequences. They retesting whether fear is more powerful than freedom. And Minnesota just gave them an answer. No, we will not accept this. We will not be quiet. We will not go away. We will make your cruelty unsustainable. We will document everything. We will remember everyone involved, and we will never stop fighting. Now, I mentioned earlier that Bovino is leaving but not facing prosecution, and that is the part that keeps me up at night. Because if we let these people walk away without accountability, we are guaranteeing this will happen again. Maybe not immediately. Maybe they'll ease up for a while, let things cool down, wait for us to get tired and stop paying attention, and then they'll come back worse than before. That is what authoritarians do. They test boundaries, they retreat when they meet resistance, then they try again with different tactics. So we can just celebrate Bovino leaving Minneapolis and move on. We need prosecutions. We need the agents who murdered Alex Pry in jail. We need everyone who gave orders for these operations investigated and held accountable. We need Congress to use its power to conduct hearings, to subpoena documents, to expose exactly how this happened and who approved it. And I know some Democrats have been hesitant about this. Some of them are still voting to fund ICE. Some of them think we need to be bipartisan and work with Republicans. But that's over now. It has to be over. You cannot work with people who are building a Gestapo. You cannot compromise with people who think murdering citizens is acceptable policy. You can only defeat them. And I believe we will, but only if we stay focused and dawn to give up when things get hard. One thing that really struck me in the comments was how many international voices there were. People from Australia, from Europe, from Canada, all saying they rewatching America slide into fascism in real time. And that's humbling and terrifying because they've seen this before. They know how it ends and they trying to warn us. But I think there's also something important in their perspective. They reminding us that America isn't special. We not immune to tyranny just because we have a constitution. Rights only exist when people are willing to defend them. And right now, we being tested on whether we will. I also want to talk about something that about 5% of commenters mentioned, and I think it's crucial. They pointed out that local police in Minneapolis were protecting ICE agents from protesters. They were standing in riot gear between citizens and federal agents who were committing atrocities. And that's a betrayal that cuts deep. Because these are supposed to be our neighbors. These are people who live in our communities, whose kids go to school with our kids. And they choosing to protect federal agents who are terrorizing their own city. That tells us something important. The corruption isn't just at the federal level, it's local too. And we need to address that. We need to vote out prosecutors who want to charge these agents. We need to vote out police chiefs who order their officers to protect federal murderers. We need to vote out mayors and city council members who collaborate with this administration. Everyone involved needs to face consequences. And here's something I've been thinking about a lot. Alex Pry was killed on December 11th, 2025, exactly 1 year after the veteran he'd been caring for died. The veteran's name was Terrence Lee Randolph. He served his country, he came home, he lived a full life. And at the end, he had someone who cared for him with dignity and compassion, someone who honored his service, someone who made sure he wasn't alone. And then that same person, that caregiver, was murdered in the street by the government he dedicated his life to supporting. There's something about that symmetry that feels intentional, like the universe is trying to tell us something, like we are being given a choice about what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be the country that honors service and sacrifice, or do we want to be the country that murders caregivers? I think about Alex Pry's last moments. He was shot in the back. He never had a chance to defend himself. He probably didn't even know why he was being targeted. And as he lay dying in the street, what was he thinking? Was he confused, angry, scared? Did he think about the veterans he'd cared for? Did he think about his family? Did he wonder how his country had come to this? We'll never know, because dead men can tell their stories, but we can tell his story. We can make sure everyone knows his name. We can make sure his death wasn't in vain. And we can make damn sure the people who killed him don't get away with it. Now, I want to talk about what happens next, because Bovino leaving Minneapolis is good news, but it's not victory, not yet. According to multiple sources, including some of the commenters, these agents are just reconvening in a different location under Tom Bovino. They regrouping, they readjusting their tactics, they figuring out how to operate without generating as much public outrage. And that's dangerous, because if we let them adapt, if we let them figure out how to do this more quietly, we're going to wake up one day in a full authoritarian state and wonder how we got here. So we need to keep the pressure on, not just in Minneapolis, everywhere. Every city where ICE is operating, every community where federal agents are terrorizing residents, every place where people are being detained without due process, deported without hearings, or killed without accountability, we need to make all of it visible. We need to document everything, and we need to make sure everyone involved knows they are being watched. One commenter made a point that I think is absolutely crucial. They said we can let them ease up a bit and think everything will be swept under the rug. We have to stay angry forever. And I think that's exactly right. Not angry in a destructive way, angry in a focused, determined way. Angry in a way that translates to action. Angry in a way that sustains resistance over the long term, because this is going to be a long fight. Authoritarianism doesn't get defeated in a few weeks or months. It gets defeated through years of sustained resistance, through building alternative institutions, through creating communities of support, through making sure that everyone who stands up has people behind them. Through voting in every election, no matter how small, through running for office ourselves when we can, through supporting candidates who will actually fight, through refusing to be exhausted into submission. And here's what I know for certain. If Minnesota can do this, anywhere can do this. Minneapolis isn't special. The people there aren't superhuman. They are ordinary citizens who decided enough was enough. They are parents and workers and students and retirees who looked at what was happening and said, not in our city, not to our neighbors, not while we can do something about it. And they organized, they showed up, they sustained the pressure until it worked. Every city in America can do the same thing. Every community can organize, every neighborhood can protect its own, and if we all do this together, if we make it impossible for this administration to operate without massive public resistance, we can win. Not easily, not quickly, but we can win. I'm going to tell you something personal now. I am going to Greenland. Yeah, I know that sounds random, but stay with me, because I think what's happening with Greenland is connected to what's happening with ICE. This administration is testing boundaries everywhere. They are seeing how much they can get away with domestically and internationally. They are normalizing things that should be unthinkable. And if we don't push back on all of it, if we just focus on one crisis while ignoring the others, we are going to lose. So I am going to Greenland to document what's happening there, to talk to people, to show Americans that this administration's recklessness isn't limited to our borders, but I'm also staying focused on what's happening here, on ICE, on the detention camps, on the families being torn apart, on the citizens being murdered, because all of it matters, all of it is connected, and all of it needs to be stopped. And I need you to understand something. I could be wrong about all of this. Maybe I'm seeing connections that aren't there. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe Bovino leaving Minneapolis really is a sign that the system is correcting itself. But I don't think I am wrong. Every piece of evidence, every pattern, every action this administration has taken points to the same conclusion. They rebuilding an authoritarian state. They reusing immigration as the excuse. And they recounting on us being too tired, too scared, or too divided to stop them. But Minnesota just proved they are wrong. We are not too tired, we are not too scared, and we can overcome our divisions when we see injustice clearly enough. So here's what I'm asking you to do. First, don't forget this. Don't let the news cycle move on. Don't let the next outrage distract you from this one. Keep Alex Pry's name in your mind. Keep this story alive. Talk about it, share it. Make sure everyone knows what happened. Second, find one thing you can do. Maybe it is calling your representative every week. Maybe it is showing up to a protest once a month. Maybe it is donating to legal funds for people being detained. Maybe it is just having conversations with people who disagree with you, trying to persuade them that this isn't normal, this isn't acceptable, this has to stop. Whatever you can do it. And keep doing it. Third, take care of yourself and each other. This fight is going to be long. We need to pace ourselves. We need to build communities of support so we don't burn out. We need to celebrate small victories while staying focused on the bigger goal. And we need to remember that we're fighting for something worth having, a country where the government doesn't murder citizens. where rights actually mean something, where caregivers can go about their work without fear of being executed. That's the country I still believe we can have. That's the country I'm fighting for. And based on what I saw in Minnesota, I think we can win. But only if we're willing to fight like everything depends on it. Because it does. Our freedom depends on it. Our democracy depends on it. Our lives might depend on it. So thank you, Minnesota. Thank you for showing us how it is done. Thank you for refusing to accept tyranny. Thank you for sustaining the pressure until it worked. And to everyone watching this, everyone reading this, everyone who is feeling scared or angry or hopeless right now, I want you to know you are not alone. There are millions of us, and we were not giving up. We were not backing down. We were not going to let America become an authoritarian state without one hell of a fight. Remember Alex Pry, honor his memory, honor all the victims of this administration as cruelty, and channel that grief and rage into sustained, focused, effective resistance. Because that's how we win. That's how we save this country. And that's how we make sure that future generations look back on this moment and say, we fought, we didn't give up, and we won. The tree of liberty, as Thomas Jefferson said, must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Alex Pry was a patriot. He gave his blood. Now it's our turn to make sure it wasn't wasted. It's our turn to water that tree. It is our turn to fight. And we start by following Minnesota as example. We organize, we show up, we sustain the pressure, and we don't stop until every single person involved in these atrocities is held accountable. Not some of them, all of them. From Bovino to Noem to Miller to everyone else who gave orders or carried them out or looked the other way, this is our moment. This is our test, and I believe we're going to pass it, but only if we choose to. Only if we decide that freedom matters more than comfort, that justice matters more than peace, that truth matters more than tribal loyalty. So choose. Right now, choose what kind of American you want to be and then act on that choice. Every